stupid crazy. You think this is funny?
No, sir!
The movie opens in Bogota, Colombia. A man named Fabio is speaking to Don Luis, a drug lord and his boss. Fabio informs him that he is quitting and handing over the books, the cartel's financial records, to another associate. Don Luis smiles and says he will miss him, and the two men toast to Fabio's life. As Fabio leaves, Don Luis motions to Marco, his ruthless right-hand man. Fabio, however, is not stupid. He knows his boss will retaliate against anyone trying to leave the smuggling life. He takes 3 loyal guards and races home, knowing they have only 1 hour to flee the country. Fabio arrives home and tells his wife Alicia that it is time to go. He goes to tell his young daughter Catalina to pack, but she is already ready. Fabio warns her that if anything happens, she must go to the American embassy and give them a microchip containing all the evidence of Don Luis's illegal activities. He also gives her an address for his brother. Fabio then gives his daughter a necklace featuring a Catalina flower. She was named after the flower because his mother always grew them. Minutes later, Marco and numerous cartel members arrive and slaughter Fabio's men. Fabio and Alicia grab guns and try to hold the assassins off, but both are killed. Amidst the screams and gunfire, Catalina sits at the table in shock. Thinking quickly, she swallows the microchip. Marco and his men approach her, and Marco pretends to be friendly, claiming he was a friend of her father. He demands the microchip that Fabio took from Don Luis. As he leans in close, Catalina grabs a knife hidden under the table and stabs him through the hand. She quickly escapes through a window and onto a ledge. Apparently, her parents had already taught her the necessary skills to survive such a tragedy. She runs to escape while Marco's cartel goons give chase. Despite being hunted by parkour runners and men in motorcycles and cars, Catalina eludes them by escaping into the sewers. She eventually surfaces and heads to the U.S. Embassy, where she is brought before an agent who asks about her father. Catalina tells him he is dead. When the agent asks if her father left anything behind, Catalina quickly forces herself to vomit, producing the microchip. It contains records of all of Don Luis's illegal activities. The agent looks at her in shock and asks if she realizes what she has.
Do you know what this is?
My passport.
In exchange for the chip, they agree to get her out of the country with legal papers. An American CIA agent escorts her to Miami, but during a stop, Catalina asks to use the bathroom and escapes through a window. She buys a bus ticket to Chicago, following her father's instructions. She heads to a seedy neighborhood and asks for Emilio, her father's brother. When Emilio sees her, he is overcome with emotion and pulls her into a hug. Finally feeling safe, Catalina lets go and cries in her uncle's arms. The next day, Emilio takes her to a private prep school and bribes the principal to accept her mid-year. As they leave, Catalina is furious. Believing she can learn nothing at school, she wants to be trained as an assassin. Suddenly, Emilio pulls out a revolver and shoots at a passing car, causing it to crash. He tells her that hired killers are a dime a dozen, he could teach her that way, and she'd be dead in 5 years. He insists that if she wants to do this and be smart, she needs an education to understand how people think. Catalina listens. Present day, 2 cops are sitting in their car discussing their lives when they are smashed into by a drunk driver. A woman stumbles out, babbling incoherently. They quickly arrest her, and we see a flower necklace around her neck. It is Catalina, now fully grown. They take her to the police station, where she is booked for a DUI and thrown into a cell for the night. She goes to sleep. That night, U.S. Marshals arrive with a high-profile prisoner and escort him to his cell. Catalina wakes up. It is revealed that her DUI was a ruse specifically designed to get her inside the station. The prisoner is her target. She changes into a skin-tight black suit, picks the lock of her cell, and grabs a spoon from a nearby cup of coffee. After swiveling the security cameras to avoid detection, she grabs water from a cooler and heads to the electrical room. She rigs the cup and spoon to create a short circuit and climbs into the air ducts. A few seconds later, the leaking water triggers a power surge, killing the lights. Catalina maneuvers through a now-stopped ventilation fan just before the power resets. She drops into the men's restroom. The officer guarding the prisoner realizes he's out of coffee and heads to the bathroom, where Catalina promptly knocks him out. She drags his unconscious body in front of the security camera to trick the control room into reopening the door. Once inside the cell, she rouses the prisoner and orders him to undo his shirt. When he asks why, she shoots him several times. Hearing the gunfire, the marshals rush in to find the dazed guard with a gun in his hand. Catalina has framed him to buy herself time. While the marshals search the building, Catalina retreats to the roof. Once the coast is clear, she returns through the air ducts, relocks her cell door, and changes back into her original clothes. By the time the marshals check on her, she is lying down, pretending to be asleep. With the authorities completely clueless, Catalina is released the next day. As she walks away, she peels off a layer of fake latex skin from her fingers. She had used them to leave someone else's prints during the booking process. Back at home, she dances to music before taking a long, restorative shower. Catalina heads to the apartment of Danny, a painter and her quasi-boyfriend. Danny knows very little about her, recognizing her only as Jennifer. After they spend the night together, she slips away the next morning without saying goodbye. It is clear she is afraid to let him see who she truly is. Meanwhile, FBI Special Agent Ross arrives at the jail and realizes the victim is the latest in a string of 22 murders tracked over the last 4 years. The authorities have dubbed the perpetrator the Tag Killer because of the signature mark left on every victim's chest, the Catalina flower. In New Orleans, CIA agent Richard travels to a heavily guarded villa belonging to Don Luis, who has remained unpunished for his crimes. Richard shows him the crime scene photos from the jail cell, but Luis denies any involvement. Richard reminds him that the CIA has been very generous, providing witness protection and allowing his cocaine business to thrive in exchange for intel. However, Richard warns that he knows something is wrong. After he leaves, Luis instructs Marco to handle the situation, strongly suspecting that Catalina is responsible since he failed to eliminate her years ago. Meanwhile, Catalina visits Emilio. He shows her a newspaper featuring her calling card and is livid, calling her actions reckless. Emilio reveals that he promised his brother he would protect her and never wanted her to follow this path. He has even been funneling jobs away from her to keep her out of the crosshairs. Defiant, Catalina declares that she chose this life herself and will not stop until Don Luis is dead. Emilio sighs and hands her the next job. He explains that a hedge fund manager created a Ponzi scheme, stole billions, and fled the country. Now, the victims want him dead. Meanwhile, at the FBI office, Agent Ross reviews the security footage. While some agents suspect the killer is a woman based on the tapes, Ross remains skeptical, unable to believe a woman could be such a cold-blooded assassin. Catalina heads to her office, where she is greeted by 2 large dogs that obey her every command. She feeds them steaks and meets with Pepe, a friend of Emilio who handles her weapons and custom vehicles. Catalina accesses his safe, sorting through various fake identities until she finds a passport for Mexico. In Mexico, the hedge fund manager lives in extreme opulence, surrounded by women who wouldn't look at him if he weren't a billionaire. One woman notices the sharks in his massive aquarium pool are ignoring her, but the manager warns her that a single drop of blood would make them her best friend. Sensing danger, he orders his security team to bring in extra men for the night. Unbeknownst to him, Catalina is already swimming through the aquarium. The sharks ignore her as she pushes up a glass cover to enter the mansion. She draws a silenced pistol and begins her work. The manager eventually gets up and discovers Catalina has left a message on one of his items, the word thief, accompanied by her signature flower design. As he wanders through the mansion, he realizes all of his guards have been silently eliminated. He grabs 2 guns and heads toward the pool area, where he finds another flower marking. Catalina is sitting in a chair, calmly making her presence known. The manager tries to shoot her, but his guns are empty. She has already sabotaged them. Catalina shoots him in the legs, and the man begins to plead for his life, offering to pay double her contract price to be spared. Ignoring the bribe, Catalina shoots him in the chest. He falls into the open aquarium pool, and as the blood flows, the sharks come alive in seconds. Back in the USA, Catalina returns to Danny's apartment, only to find he has left to visit some galleries. She sleeps on his bed, holding one of his shirts close. It is clear she cares for him deeply, but she remains terrified of showing him her true self. Meanwhile, Agent Ross is studying the Tag Killer's calling card when a mailman provides a vital clue. The flower is a Catalina orchid, a species that only grows in Colombia. Ross tries to link the signature to open cases in Colombia, but he is denied access because the files fall under CIA jurisdiction. Ross calls Richard to ask for clearance, but Richard dodges the request. Immediately after hanging up, Richard calls Don Luis, warning him to handle the problem before Ross connects the dots. Luis sends Marco to track Catalina down, ordering him to interrogate every Colombian contact until it leads them to her family. Later, Danny returns home and talks casually about dinner. He is happy to see Catalina, and they share a kiss. Danny stops her, suggesting they sit down to eat and talk, and they spend the night together again. By midday the next morning, Danny takes a quick photo of Catalina while she is still sleeping. He wakes her with breakfast, suggesting they eat it for lunch, but Catalina freaks out. Fearing she has become too close and vulnerable, she tells him she has to leave. Danny is left flustered, wondering what he did wrong. Catalina meets with Emilio, who is livid. He shows her the newspaper, proving she hasn't stopped using her calling card. He reveals that the cartel is already retaliating. 8 people were gunned down in a bar, including one of Emilio's friends. Catalina refuses to quit, but Emilio insists it isn't just about her anymore. She is putting her remaining family in grave danger. He tells her that when his own son died, he killed many people in revenge, but it changed nothing and only put his family at further risk. He leaves her with a picture of her parents as a reminder of what can be lost. Catalina breaks down in tears. Attempting to find peace, Catalina goes to church with Emilio and her grandmother, seemingly ready to give up her quest for revenge. At the same time, Danny is at a coffee shop talking to a friend about Jennifer. He confesses he is falling for her but realizes he knows nothing about her. When his friend sees the photo Danny took, he is shocked by how beautiful she is. While Danny is distracted by a parking ticket, his friend takes the phone and calls his sister-in-law, who works at a police station. He asks her to run a background check on Jennifer just to make sure she is legitimate, having no clue about the danger he has just unleashed. Agent Ross is at his computer when a ping alerts him to Catalina's photo. He traces the signal to the police station and has the technician arrested as they track the source further. Ross compares the photo to the security footage from the jail, and it's a perfect match. Catalina is the woman he's been hunting. Unaware of the breach, Catalina goes home and calls Danny, finally trying to articulate her feelings for him. When Danny casually mentions the photo, she freaks out, demanding to know who else saw it. As Danny mentions his friend, Catalina checks the perimeter of her apartment and realizes a SWAT team is already there to arrest her. She turns on the shower as a distraction and climbs into a vent to escape. She runs through several apartments, knocking out a tenant who tries to interfere. In a bathroom, she recovers a harness and a sniper rifle she had previously planted there. As Ross and his agents blow the door to her apartment, she triggers explosives she planted on the wall and uses the harness to slide down the exterior pipes into the garage. After shooting out the security cameras, she slips into another air duct and disappears into the subway. Catalina heads straight to Emilio's house, only to find the place ransacked. Pepe is dead on the floor. She finds her grandmother murdered in the kitchen, causing her to break down. Finally, she finds Emilio tied to a chair, dead from clear signs of torture. Stricken with guilt, Catalina tells him she is sorry. Her screams a combination of profound sadness and blinding anger. Later, Agent Ross returns home to find Catalina waiting for him with a gun. She motions for him to sit in a chair she has rigged with a pressure-sensitive explosive, warning him not to move. She reveals that her Catalina flower tag was designed specifically to draw out Don Luis, and it finally worked. Hardened by her loss, she tells Ross he has one job: get Don Luis's location from the CIA. She threatens to kill one of Ross's family members every week until he is as hollow as she is. She promises the bomb will be deactivated once she is gone. Ross goes to Agent Richard to explain the situation, but Richard refuses to give up the intel. Suddenly, Ross receives a call from Catalina. She tells him that if Richard doesn't provide the address, he will die. Richard scoffs, confident behind his reinforced glass windows, but Catalina immediately fires a sniper round that shatters the glass. Terrified, Richard gives up the address. Ross asks about the safety of his family, but Catalina hangs up. In truth, she had no intention of harming Ross's family. Her threats were merely the tools of her trade. Catalina heads to Pepe's garage, where she gathers a final arsenal of weapons. She looks at the 2 large dogs, her only remaining allies, and loads them into an armored truck before driving toward Don Luis's mansion. At the estate, Marco is frantically directing his men, warning them that Catalina is a force of nature who must not be underestimated. Suddenly, a rocket streaks through the air and slams into the mansion. Don Luis barely escapes the blast as the room erupts in flames. Marco pulls him up, and they scramble to evacuate. As 4 men pile into a car to form a getaway convoy, Catalina's armored truck busts through the gates, crushing their vehicle. She leaps out and peppers the car with bullets, eliminating the men in a fierce opening shootout. Bit by bit, she methodically picks off the rest of the guards. Marco manages to place Don Luis in a safe room before heading back out to kill Catalina himself. After several intense skirmishes, it comes down to just Marco and one other man. Catalina kills the guard and finds herself face-to-face with Marco. A brutal hand-to-hand fight ensues. They trade blows, alternately disarming one another of Catalina's handgun. At one point, Catalina uses a towel to try and choke him. Marco eventually regains control of the gun and prepares to fire, but Catalina is faster. She ejects the magazine and rips the slide off the frame, using the metal piece to stab him in the neck, killing him instantly. Realizing his men are dead, but believing Catalina doesn't know his location, Don Luis leaves the panic room and attempts to flee in a van. He hits a dead end blocked by a garbage truck. His phone rings. It's Marco's phone, but Catalina is on the other end. Luis taunts her, claiming she will never kill him because she doesn't have him cornered. He looks into the back of his van and sees the two dogs. They tear Don Luis apart, finally making her revenge complete. In the aftermath, Danny is taken into custody by Agent Ross and the FBI. He maintains that he knows nothing, and Ross admits that while Danny isn't under arrest, he still needs answers. Suddenly, Danny's phone rings. It's Catalina. She tells him she's okay but warns him they only have 40 seconds before the FBI traces the call. Enough time for 3 questions. He asks for her real name, and she finally tells him, Catalina. Danny then asks if his little bird will return one day. Catalina softly replies that maybe one day she can. An agent alerts Ross to the call, and they rush into the room just as Danny says, I love you. The words bring a tear to Catalina's eye. Ross orders Danny to hand over the phone, but she hangs up before they can get a lock on her. Ross stares at the silent phone and tells Danny he is free to go. Catalina puts on her sunglasses and boards a bus, heading for a destination unknown. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next recap.